let's get started then. So I'm in Blender now, and I've got the 3 beta version, and we're just going to go File, New and General, and that will start us off with a cube. So this is a 2 meter by 2 meter cube, that's the default size. So I want to move this up so it's sitting on the ground plane so that this face is right on the grid. So if I just click the move gizmo up here and then move upwards, I can click on the move dialog down the bottom and type in 1, and that will move it 1 meter up so it's sitting exactly on that ground plane, which is perfect. Okay, so as well as that, I want to extrude this up to make it a more tower shape, and for that we will go to edit mode, so press tab and then go to face mode and select the top face, and we'll use the extrude region to bring it up. So if I click and drag that, I'll get my little extrude dialog box down the bottom, and I'm going to go 2 meters. So each of my stories is going to be 2 meters high. So if I then repeat that and do another 2 meters, I'll have 3 steps. Okay, so we also want to put a top on this. I haven't really decided how I'm going to do that yet, or what I'm going to do with it yet, but I know I want a little kind of ridge around the top. So what we'll do is extrude up a little more, say 50 centimeters. So I'll type in 50 cm, and then I'm going to select the loop around the top of this now. So I'll press Alt down and click near the edge of a polygon, and then we can use our extrude again, but this time we want to use extrude along normals. So on the extrude region box, I'll go extrude along normals, and that will push it outwards, and let's make it 0.5, 50 centimeters. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I've clearly gone back too far. There we go, 0.5. Okay, so now we have a kind of basic tower shape. I'm not going to ever need the bottom, so I'm going to delete that face with the delete key and faces, and yeah, when we come back we'll start to put some more shape into it. It's not very exciting at the moment, but we'll get there. Okay, so now what I want to do is sort of angle off these edges. So if I just Alt and click on the edge there, and Shift Alt click on the others, I can select all of them at the same time, and then Control B to bevel, and then just click into the viewport, and now we can either type in or use these sliders to dial it down. So I'm going to extrude out from these to get a kind of a support pillar on the corner. So I want it to be reasonably chunky, but I don't want it to be so chunky that it takes up all the space. So I'm going to go for something around about 0.2. There we go. Now this causes us a big egg on the top, but I'm not going to worry about that because we'll fix that in later iterations. But what I do want to do is put a support underneath these this eaves up here. So let me go to the select modes to cancel that bevel, or to complete that bevel, and then I'll use the edge loop cut and put a loop around the bottom there. Now what that's going to allow me to do is to delete a polygon up here so that I can extrude this out and then weld it up. So let's do that. So back to face mode, come out of there so I don't go and continue loop cutting, and let's delete all those out. So delete and faces. So now then I can start to bring these out. So if I select all of these edges, all of these faces rather, I've got Shift held down while I'm clicking, I can now extrude these out. So if I hit the extrude and then extrude out, and as we're extruding along normals, and I just want to bring it out so it's close to about halfway. So as I think I've brought that out about 50 centimetres. I think 0.25 is too much. Well, that'll do. I don't need it to be completely straight, I just need it to be pretty damn close. So there we go. So what I want to do now is weld these up. So what we can do is, as long as we're careful and we don't go too crazy with it, if I select everything, let me just press A, there we go, A will select everything or nothing, and then go back to just a select mode. Under mesh we can use the merge option. Where's mesh gone? Clean up and merge by distance, and the distance so far is very low. It's too low for those to weld up, so I'm just going to increase that distance until they weld up. So I've had 8 vertices weld in, and that should be lovely now. There we go. So now we have a tower with some vertical kind of supports, and I actually want to put some more interest into these, so I'm going to select the bottom 2 of each corner, and then we'll extrude those outwards. Let's see how much I've done that by. Let's say it's 0.15, and then we'll select just the bottom one on each of those corners, and we'll bring that out 0.15. There we go. So now we have something that's a little bit more towel-like. We've got some supports, we've got some, we've got the eaves, we've got a few bits and bobs. I do want to delete all of these down here. Let me go back to select mode and turn on the ghosting, and then I can select across the bottom. I haven't selected that. There we go. And then press delete and delete those faces because we're not going to use them. Okay, let's turn ghost mode off and have a look around, and there we are. It's starting to look like a tower. So next I think we'll perhaps have a look at the roof and see what we can do with that, see if we can make something interesting. So I will talk to you in the next section. Okay, so before I go much further, I'm just going to rescale these lines at the top, because I don't want this to be too short. I want them to be kind of equidistant, so I'm just going to estimate that. So with these 2 lines selected, I'm going to press scale, and then I believe it's the Y scale, and let's bring that in I think somewhere around 50%. And then we'll select the other 2 going in the other direction, press scale and X, so S and X, and bring it in, and I'll make that 0.5 as well. And now I've got quite a nice shape at the top. If I press Alt and click there, you'll see we've got kind of a, well, it's not kind of a, it is an octagon. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, unless my dyslexia is really off today. So I'm going to scale that out again, just so it's a little bit closer to the edge in places, and then we'll use extrude and bring that up to make a nice kind of tall piece, and then S and bring it in, whoops, not too far, to start to form a peak. And when we get to the top, if I press S2 finally on this, I don't want to go to a complete point, I just want to leave that up the top as it is, but yeah, I think I perhaps want to move it up, so let's use G with the Z key to constrain, and let's pop that upwards. There we go. So now we have a kind of a nice tower, and all we need to do is add some lovely details to it, which we'll start to do in the next bit. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so there are times when not having a mesh as one single piece is a good thing, because when you start to update it and you want to bevel in certain places, the more complicated your mesh is, the more trouble you're going to have with beveling. And by that I mean either selective beveling, which can cause you n-gons in certain places, or global beveling, where you bevel everything and then you just get too much geometry. So what we're going to do is select the very top polygon up here on the roof, and we'll press Control and plus on the numpad, which will expand our selection to select that whole roof kind of cone. And then on the mesh menu we'll go Control D and separate by selection, and that will create us a nice new little mesh there. Now I'm going to go out of edit mode to object mode, and I'll select my roof here, and I'm going to rename it. So we'll rename that to roof. It hasn't renamed it up here, it's renamed it here. So I'm going to click there and call that roof. There we go. And our original cube, we'll click on that and call that tower. And now I can keep track of which is which and which I might have selected on. Let's just be consistent, call that one tower as well. Okay, so now that I've done that, I can work in isolation on the roof without having to worry about all of the polygons and extra geometry I'm going to add elsewhere. And for this I'm just going to bring it up and give it a little lip on the bottom. So in edit mode I'm going to select all of my polygons, so I can hit the A key with nothing selected, and then I'm going to press the G key and constrain it in the Z by pressing Z. I'm just going to bring that up, but I want to know exactly how much I'm bringing it up. We'll make it 0.3, a nice even number, because then I can go to edge mode, press Alt and click on the bottom edge to select the loop around, and then use the extrude and bring that down. Now I've used the extrude normal, I just want the extrude region, and there we go. So I'll bring that down negative 0.3. Now it matches up quite nicely, and that gives me a little bit of extra there. And part of the reason I wanted to displace this and separate the part is because I want to bevel these edges. So if I select each of these, so I've got Control Alt, no I don't, I have Shift Alt held down, so Alt and click the first one, and then Shift Alt and select the rest of them. There we go, nearly there. And I can select the top as well. Then we can go Control B and click in the viewport, and I can start to bevel. Now I can't bevel too far because the top will crush up, but I want to bevel enough just to soften it up. So I'm going to give it 2 segments, and then yeah, that's good. Okay, now the other thing I want to do is in face mode, I want to alt click on the bottom polygon up towards one edge to select the loop, and then we want to extrude that out a bit, but this time we do want to go along the normals, so let's go normal and just bring that out, and now I've got a little lip that's joining it actually to the top of the tower. It's not just sitting on it, if you know what I mean. And then we'll go to edge mode and alt click and shift alt click there, and Control B to bevel, just click in and let's make it 2mm. It's probably not enough. It's nowhere near enough. In fact, it didn't type in, so let's just dial that up till it looks good. There we go. So we now have two pieces of our tower, and next I want to go through and selectively bevel the bottom with the tower part. So we'll do that in the next one. Okay, so I just want to do a bit of shaping on this before I go too much further. So I'm going to go to edge mode, and I want to select just the very tips of these columns here, and the same for the bottom, because we're just going to angle them down a little bit so that, you know, it's an interesting shape, or a more interesting shape. Excuse me. So I'll press G and Z to constrain it in vertical, and then just bring it down and click to drop that tool. Okay, so now I have a small problem, because I want to bevel these verticals here, and if I alt click on that bottom one, instead of selecting all the way up, it's going to stop because it doesn't know which way to go, and we need to change our geometry so that it does. So for that, I want to select all of these internals, all of the outsides of the columns, and once I've done that, I press the I key for inset. Oops, that's way too far. There we go. And just click in there, and I'm going to put, say, 0.05. Give it a nice little indent. And now when I go back to edge mode and alt click on the line, it goes all the way up. So if I shift alt click on the other side, it does the same. And now if I do Control and B, we can put a little bevel in there. And because I made it like 0.5 inset, I can pretty much go up to 0.5. I don't think I'm going to go quite that far. Maybe 0.025, halfway. And then we'll give it an extra segment to give it a little bit of interest, and that's done something weird. So that's going inwards, and that might be because I've done something stupid. Yes, I've changed the shape. There we go. So the shape should be 1. I've obviously clicked and changed it in this session, so it wasn't. Okay, so now we have a nice bevel going up there, but we do have a little issue on the bottom. So if I select over those, you'll see I've got a bunch of polygons in there, or a bunch of edges that aren't really matching up to what I want. So we're going to deal with that probably in the next section, but in between sections I'll just repeat that process on all of the other columns, so you know, when we come back we can do it all in one lump. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so now that we've got this, we've just got to fix these bottom bits, and essentially any of these polygons down the bottom here, or faces rather, I'm not interested in at all. So some of them are n-gons and some of them are these, but they're just not necessary, so we might as well delete them. So I'm just going to go into the X-ray mode there, and then drag select a box over the bottom, and that's going to select all the polygons, all the faces that I don't want. I can press delete and faces, and it will get rid of those. And then I'm going to go to edge mode and alt click on the bottom edge, and we want to scale this so that it's flat. So if I press S and restrict in Z, and then click into the viewport, and I want the Z value to be 0. So there they're nice and flat. But they're probably not sitting on the ground plane, so let's have a look at that. If we get the 1, yeah, not quite. So we can move this down, and if I turn snapping on, and in the options I want to have absolute grid snap turned on, I can press G and it's going to snap to the grid, and I can just snap it down to the floor. There we go. So let's come out of X-ray mode, and that's fixed that up nicely. And yeah, I think we've got a couple of big kind of details-ish to put into this. I ought to bevel up here actually, so let's bevel around these tops. So I'll select those and Control B and bevel. I'm going to give it quite a big bevel because well, basically if you don't give it a really decent bevel, it's not going to show. And I also have a bit of an issue in that my geometry is too tight for it to bevel sensibly. So I'm going to Control Z that and go to poly mode, and I'll select a polygon and then alt click on the side of it to select the loop, and now we can extrude this out. So if I extrude that now, I've got much nicer geometry at the top to work with. So back to edge mode, alt click there, shift alt click on the bottom, and then Control and B and click in, and now I can pop my bevel in. Still not beveling as I would really want it, but let's take that down to 1 and then re-bevel. So alt click, shift alt click on those two, and shift alt click on those, and then Control B and click, and then let's see what I get out of that. Just having a bit of trouble with precision there. There we go, that's nice. So I want, you know, quite a big bevel on the top, because a small bevel will help because it won't look quite so angular, but I'm not going to be seeing this particularly close up, so I want it to be kind of obvious from a distance. Sometimes in 3D you have to exaggerate a bit, you know, otherwise, you know, you lose a lot of detail. Okay, so next then I want to add some kind of wooden aspects to this, maybe some wooden beams under here. Yeah, so we'll do that next. Talk to you in a moment. Okay, so I want to put a little things under there, and I was thinking wood, but then I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would I have wood beams holding up a kind of stone roof? Yeah, no. So I've changed my mind. I'm going to put some kind of stone things up here instead. So what I'm going to do is utilise some of the geometry I've already got. So in poly mode or face mode, I'm going to select each of my pieces here, and I want to duplicate them. So I'll press Shift and D, and then if I right click, it will go back, and I've got snapping on. Let's turn that off. And with that done, I'm going to press Shift and H to isolate everything, or isolate them rather, and then we'll select all of the bottom edges and move them upwards. So G and Z to constrain, and let's move those up. And now I want to cut them up a bit, so let's do that with my cut tool here. So if I click, and then I can increase the amount of cuts. So let's try 3, that's not enough. 4, 2, 3, yeah, 2. So what I'm looking to have is just these two basically, and then I'm going to delete the rest and extrude these out. So let's do that same for the other ones. So if I click here and type in 4, helps if I click in the box. There we go. And we'll do the same on this side and the same on this side. Oops. 4. And now in poly mode, I'll go to selection and I'll delete every other one. There we go. So delete and faces, and then if I select them all we can now extrude them out. So if we use the extrude, I can bring those out a little bit, and that should be enough, I think. Yeah. So I'm definitely not going to need the inside faces of these because nobody is ever going to see them. So I'm going to select all those, there we go, and delete and faces. And now to unhide everything else, we'll go Alt H, and now I've got some little stone supports up there. You could shape them a little bit more if you wished, you know, give them a step perhaps, but I think all I'm going to do is grab the bottom edge of each. Let's go off that tool, go back to select mode, there we go, and then G to move and Z to constrain, and I'll just put a little diagonal in there to make it a little bit more interesting. Okay, so I'm going to click on the main body of the tower now and press L to select it, and then H to hide it. And now I'm just going to do a bit of beveling on these. So the top I'm never going to see either, so let's delete that. And the reason I delete a lot of these is not only to save a bit of space in terms of UVs, you know, the more polygons you have, the more space you lose in your UV, and therefore the less texture density you get. But it also gives me flexibility on beveling. You know, the more polygons I have and the more edges I have, the more I have to think about beveling, and I don't want to. Okay, so let's delete those tops, and then it's just a question of alt clicking on each of these lines. That's not going to alt click, never mind. So I'm just going to select each of these edges. So just select an edge. Sorry, I said alt, and you know, I'm very used to saying alt when I'm selecting, but it's actually going to, you know, not help at all here. And then I'll Control B and click in to the viewport and give it a bit of a bevel. And this time we'll give it some, give it a couple of levels of bevel. Actually, I think I might have overdone my shape here. Yes, of course I've overdone my shape, so let's set that to 0.5. That's why it wasn't soft earlier. It's my own fault. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to do the rest between videos, and then we'll come back and start to do some work, more work. Okay, so we want to cut some windows in now, and for that I need a square in the middle of these polygons. Now we could just bevel it in, but I don't really like doing that because it restricts my options at the sides. So what I'm going to do is find the loop cut, and I'm going to loop cut up the middle and set that to, say, 3. Now I'm going to delete the middle one out, but I'm doing it like this because 3 gives me a nice proportion for the window. There we go. One more. And 3. There we go. Okay, so now I've done that, I need a top and a bottom for this. So if I use my loop cut, I click and hold, and I'm going to push that up, and again, but down. And now we're going to shape the window. So rather than just in you know, extruding it inwards, whoops, what I want to do is bevel it in first. So I'm just going to select each of my faces here, whoops, not that one, and then we use the I key and just click in, and we'll bring that in just a little bit. I think I've gone way too far. There we go. So what's that, 0.06, let's make it 0.95. And now we've got that far, we can extrude it inwards. So give it some nice depth, and then yeah, we're away. Okay, so now I just want to bevel the windowsill or the edge, So alt click on the outside and shift alt click on the other ones. There we go, and then control B and click and use your slider down here, or the slide bar on the width, to bring it in a little bit. So I've got 2 segments, 0.5 of my shape, and that's coming in quite nicely. Excuse me. Okay, so that's our top window, and as I said, we don't want this middle bit, so let me go back to select, and then I'm going to select all of these verticals with shift alt and click, and then delete and dissolve those edges, because I want to put some more windows in. And you know, if I keep doing that process and leaving the cuts in, it's just going to increase my geometry and keep increasing it, and I don't want it to. Okay, so next we'll do the next level windows, and these are going to be slightly different in that they'll be I believe what they call murder holes. They're kind of long vertical slits that an archer can you know, shoot out of from relative safety. So we'll pop those in next, so I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's pop these little long, thin, narrow windows in, and there's not much, well, there's no difference essentially in the technique, but we might work on the positioning of them. So if I go to my slice and slice down the middle there, that's going to give me a middle. And then if I click on either side, that will give me another one, and either side again, and now I have an even smaller window. Now I can continue doing that until I get the size and position I want, and I'm going to do it like that, and then we'll use the slice to give them a height and a depth. I think that bottom one's probably a bit low, so let's just make it a little bit higher. And then in poly mode, I'm going to select the windows that I want, or the positions that I want. So I can do that there. There we go. And then we use exactly the same process. So we use I to inset and bring them in. Oops, somewhere around there. And then we use our extrude to give them some depth, and I'm going to give these quite a bit of depth because I want there to be a lot of shadow. Not meant to be able to see much inside there. And then we will bevel those edges. So back to edge and select, so alt click on the first one, shift alt click on the second, control B to bevel, click to start it off, and then just give it a little slide until it's as you want it. So there we have it. We have what they charmingly call murder holes. So what I'm going to do now is take out what I don't need. So I don't need anything going down the middle of those two, or that one. So I'll select those and dissolve those edges. There we go. So I've still got more edges than I'd perhaps want, but at least they are, you know, at least I don't have more. Now one of the nice things about this is now that I've got all this geometry in here, I can start moving things around if I wanted to. So if I select the inner piece there and press Control and plus on the number pad until it selects right out to the edge of the bevel, I can then press G and X to constrain it on the X axis, and I can move it around. And I could even suggest select that one, press G and X, and move it out even more. And if I do the same on the other side, I wasn't really paying attention to how much I did it. I want a little bit of perhaps variation. Oops, I've missed a plus there. Just need to reselect those bits out there. There we go. So G and X, and I'm going to move that out a little bit as well. So now they're separated and they're not, you know, perfect. And you know, much as I like perfection, and I really do. It's nice to have some imperfection, and often in 3D, you know, imperfection can, you know, give you a sense of reality, because too much perfection breaks the reality. I hope that makes sense. So there we go. In between, I'm going to repeat that around, and then we'll come back and put a door in. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so I want to cut a door in now, and I've come out of object mode. Now I realise I've made a mistake. I've only made my things 2 meters high, and I want a door to be 2.1 meters high. So actually I want to scale this up a little bit. So what we'll do is grab the bottom. So alt click on the bottom, the bottom edges, and I'm going to move them down by about a meter. Well, a meter. So it's G and Z, and I'll move it down -1. There we go. And now I need to move everything up +1. So if I go to face mode, press A to select everything, and I'll use the W, not the W key, the G key on the Z axis, and we'll move it up 1 meter. So now I've got a bit of extra space. Excellent. So my roof needs to move as well, of course, so I'll come out of edit mode and select the roof, and then go back into edit mode and select all of the roof and move it up 1 meter on the Z axis. And now it should all fit, and I've got enough space to put a door in. And it's kind of a nice shape anyway. There we go. So where are we? I want to come out of edit mode into object mode, select my tower, and then go back into edit mode again. There we go. So now I can cut in a door. So let me go to the front view, just making sure I've got the front selected, and what we'll do is use our loop cut to cut around there, and then I'm going to flatten it. So back to select mode, I'm going to press the scale key and then restrict it to Z and bring it down and type in 0 on the Z axis. Now I want this to be 2.1 meters above the ground, and I don't know where it is at the moment, so what I want to do is move it down to the ground plane. So I'm going to turn snapping on and make sure I've got my absolute grid snap selected, and then G and Z, and just move it down till it's on the floor, and then press G and Z and move it back up again, but this time I only want to move it 2.1 meters. There we go. So we'll type 2.1 in, and I'll turn my snapping off, which made that super confusing. Sorry about that. Oh, excuse me, I'm really froggy today. Okay, so my width looks like I suspect it would be a really narrow door. So what I'm going to do is measure it to start with. So we use the measure tool, and I'm going to click on, well, I'm going to turn snapping on first and turn off grid. I just want vertices. I'm going to click on that vertex and drag over until I get to the other one, and it's about 80 millimeters wide. I want it to be at least 90 millimeters, so let's grab that and scale it up a bit. So come off the scale tool, select my polygons. I'm going to use the scale option in the x-axis, and I'm going to push that out. I don't want to be really exact, I just don't want it to be so small you couldn't fit a human being through it. And since I'm going to bevel in a little bit, I want a little bit of extra. So let's go back to the scale. I can click on that scale and delete it, and that one which I accidentally selected, and then pop that in, and now it's about 1 metre, which is going to give us a little bit of leeway to bevel in. So let's do that now. So back to select mode, and we'll use our inset. Oops, I'm going mad. Alright, I'm just going to type it in 0.05. There we go. And then we'll extrude that inwards to give it a bit of depth. There we go. This is a really tiny tile, but hey, you live and you learn. So I'm selecting these down here just to highlight them. Sometimes you want them there and sometimes you don't. If you don't want them there, you delete them, and then you select the whole of the bottom ring, flatten it and put it on the zero, on the ground plane. I'm happy with them being there for the moment because they're forming quite a nice step into the door. There we go. So a bit of an option there. So there we have a tower, and next what we're going to do is have a think about what we could add to it. And I think I might even go into another mode. Let's do that now. Let's go into the rendered mode and have a look, see what it looks like. I'm going to go back to offset, not offset, object mode here, and select my light. And on the light properties, I'm just going to turn that into a sun, and then take the strength down to give it a bit of interest, or take some of the how can I put it, harshness out of it. So let's rotate this round, down, oops, down, there we go. I want it to be looking in the other direction because that's where our door is, and there we have it. It looks okay, nothing too fantastic, nothing too awful, but we want to add a little bit more detail in it before we're finished. So I'll talk to you in the next section. Okay, so now I've adjusted the bottom. I want to adjust the top and the middle floor. That's okay, it's straightforward enough. All I need to do is pop to X-ray mode. I'm in vertex mode here. I'll get into the front view, and I need to select everything down to just below the first set of windows, and then G and Z, and I'll move that up. I'm not going to move it up 1 metre, but let's make it 0.5 metre instead. There we go. And then I'll go back into the front mode and I'll do the same for the top floor. So G and Z and move it up. Now, whoops, sorry, got my fingers mixed up there. G and Z, move it up, and then 0.5. And now if I go and select my roof object in object mode and then swap over to edit, make sure I've got everything selected, and I'll just move that up G and Z, and this time it's 1 metre. There we go. So let's go out of X-ray mode and have a look at it now. And yeah, I think that looks a bit better. It might be worth moving the windows down here or there, but I'm not going to do that. Let's switch over to our rendered mode. Yeah, there we go. So that's just a quick fix there. Next, when we come in, we're going to put in some extra beams and maybe an off, something to take the symmetry out of this. So I'll talk. Okay, so a few little details then. So I want to put a frame around the door, around the outside of it anyway. So I'll select my tower object and slip over to edit mode. Oops. It doesn't look like edit mode. It says it's edit mode, but it isn't. Let's do that again. Alright, well I've just tabbed twice and now it seems to be happy. Okay, so what I can do is select the polygons around my door here. If I go to face mode, and we want to duplicate these. So Control D, sorry, not Control D, Shift D, and right click, and then Shift H to hide everything else. So I want the bottom to be flat, so we'll select those two edges down the bottom and press Scale and Z, and just bring that down and set the value to 0. And now I want to drop them onto the floor. So snapping on, this time I want it to be increments and absolute. So G and Z, and just drop it till it snaps to the floor. There we go. Okay, so now we can reshape this a little bit. So if I select the sides, or this side rather, and press G and X and turn my snapping off, let's right click to cancel that. So G and X, I can move it out a little bit. So that's about minus 0.05, not 0.05, not 0.5, 0.05, John. Come on, sort your life out. There we go. And I'll do the same on this side. So G and X, and this time positive 0.05. There we go. And the top also. Now, I could select all of these, or I could delete all of these and make my life easier. So these are not necessary, so I'll press delete and dissolve edges, and then select the top one, and this time it's G and Z, and I'll move that up 0.05. So now I've got a nice thicker kind of door frame there. And in poly mode, I'll select all of these, and we use our extrude to bring that outwards. I'm going to bring it quite a way. Just having a look at the options down there, just to see what I'd missed. So let's cancel that, or confirm that rather, and now I want to select the things that I'm never going to see and delete them. So delete those faces. Now we can do some beveling, so I'll alt click on that edge and shift alt click on the outer edge and Control B and bring it in a little bit. There we go, something like that. And click off to confirm, and yes, it's all good. So Alt H to show everything else, and now I've got a little kind of additional frame coming out of there, which we can give a different material. Well, or do something slightly different with at least. Okay, so the other thing I thought to do was actually break the symmetry of this a bit, because it's all very up and down. The only difference is there's a door on one side and not on the others. So I wanted to put maybe something up here which I can use as a, you know, just as a little bit of extra. So what I'm going to do is, in face mode, I'll select this polygon because that's where I want it to line up with, and press Shift and D and right click, and then we'll scale that down a bit. So press S and bring it down, and then S and Z to kind of make it a bit squarer, and then S and down because it's too thick. Okay, so G and Z, I'm going to move it up to just above the window, and then we'll extrude that out. Have I got snapping on or something stupid? Something's happening. It's just going the wrong way. Let me undo that a couple of times. I don't have snapping on. Just refusing to come this way. Never mind. We can press G, and I think this one will be on the X-axis, and bring it back out. So what I'm going to make this into is a kind of a beam, which is going to have a brace on it, so that, you know, they could lift supplies into the tower, you know, without having to go up loads of stairs inside. So I'm just going to move that out a little bit more with G and X. There we go. excuse me. And now I'm going to give it a brace down the side. And for that I'm just going to select everything on that, so I'm going to hit the L key while pointing at it and Shift and H, and then I'm going to grab this bottom edge, come out of that mode and use G and X to just bring it out a little bit. There we go. Now I want to extrude this down, so let's go to poly mode and select the polygon, and if I extrude as per normal, it's just going to extrude out in all sorts of directions. So we have lots of options, and let's see if we can find one. So so we have extrude manifold, which doesn't help, extrude normal, which won't help. We have just extrude basic, which won't help, and nothing's helping essentially, which is not, you know, super helpful to us. But what we can do is just move it a teeny tiny bit, and then flatten it. So it's a little bit off, but it's not far off, and we could probably adjust it as we go. So if I press S now and Z, I want to move it and then set Z to 0, and then G and Z, and I'll bring it down to form like an L shape. And then on this side I want to press G and X, G, no, sorry, scale and X, S and X, to make sure that it's flat. And now it will, well, now it's flat. And S and X on the back, I will do the same, just to make sure it's flat. There we go. Okay, so that's not nearly far down enough, so let's use G and Z and bring that down to form a kind of brace. And now we need kind of a cross piece, which is going to, you know, strengthen this this piece here. So we can do that fairly easily if I duplicate this piece, so Shift and D, and then right click to put it down. Now I want to rotate it around, I believe this will be the Y axis. So if I rotate it to say 45 degrees, that would be a nice thing. And then G and Z, whoops, and bring it, sorry, it's G and X, and bring it out, and then G and Z and take it up. There we go. I'm going to scale it in a little bit so that it doesn't interfere with the edges where it's poking through. So this will be scale and Y. Just bring it, whoops, inwards. There we go. And then we'll use our extrude to give it some thickness. There we go. So if I go Alt H now, you know, our tower has got, you know, something to it which takes the symmetry away. And we can do a little bit more of that, but you know, just as features, I think I'm happy with that as it is. So in the next one I'm just going to refine that a little bit and add a little bit of detail, just to make it a little bit less plain. So I'll talk to you. Okay, so let's bevel this. First of all, I'm going to select this middle piece and hit L. Oops, pointing at the wrong thing. Point it in, hit L and Shift H. Sorry, Shift H, and then delete the ends, because they're just going to complicate things and nobody's ever going to see them. And then I'll select each of the edges on the outside and Control B and bevel those just a little bit. Somewhere about there, I think. Perhaps that's a little too much. There we go. Okay, so that's that one done, and it's Alt H to unhide. And now we'll do the top one. So I'll select it and hit L to select everything else, and Shift H. Now I don't need this back piece because nobody's ever going to see it. However, because I'm going to bevel everything, it might be best to do that afterwards. So let's select everything in edge mode first, and then we'll Control B and give it a little bevel as 0.01 we used. There we go. And yeah, this one I'm going to get rid of. So let's go to face mode and just delete that one out. There we go. It's not necessary, it just takes up space. And then Alt H to unhide everything, and now I've got some nice curved edges going into there. I might have to take a break in a moment. All the talking is making me a bit hoarse. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to take a break while I recover. And then we'll come back, and I want to put a little bit of something up here just to show that it's some sort of haulage device. Okay, so I will talk to you then. Okay, sorry about that little breakdown. Just, you know, a bit too much talking, lost my voice. Okay, so now let's have a look at this. Now I want to put a little hook under here, and we're going to use a curve for that. So just to make things a bit easier on myself, I'm going to hide both my objects. I'm in object mode, and then I'm going to add a curve. So if we add a path curve here, it will add at the 0 point, which is fine. Let's just focus on that with the full stop on the num key, and then we'll go to edit mode. Now I have lots of points on here, and I can move them around, and depending upon how I move them will depend upon what curve I get out of it. So if I grab this one for example and press G, and I'm going to press Shift Z to have it only bending in X and Y, and let's bend that something like that, I think. And then if I grab these two and press G, I can bend it a little bit more, and then this one, let's press G again. Oh, I didn't constrain it last time, did I? What a bad person. There we go. So G to move it, and Shift Z. I just want to move it a little bit like that, so getting a bit more curve coming up to this point, and then select the end, G, and then Shift Z, and now we're going to start to curl it up a bit. So we don't just have to use G, we can use rotate as well. So I'm going to rotate, and this time it's just Z. So now I can curl it up to get something that's starting to curve nicely. So I want to adjust it a bit, so let's Shift Z on those and curl that up a bit. And I want to also extend it. So I can extend it by selecting this end vertex and pressing E, and that will allow me to extrude it out. And if I press Shift Z, it will let me constrain it. Okay, so it's not looking very hook-like at the moment, and it's quite difficult to see. I hope you can. But what we can do on the curves is give it some geometry. So over in the properties under the curves panel, we can increase our depth, so I can increase that up to give it some actual shape and dimension, and gives me a better idea of where I need to put things. We can also cap the ends, which is helpful, and we can change the resolution if we wish. We might do that, depends upon how we end up. Right, so I'm going to pull these out, so G and Shift Z. There we go. And then I might bring these over a little, so G and Shift Z, pull it in, and then this one, G and Shift Z. I'm going to fed up at all saying that, aren't I? And I'll pull that one over, and then this one, G and Shift Z, I'll pull that out into more of a hook shape. So now we have what looks like a hook, and I don't think it needs any resolution change. If anything, it might want to come down because it's probably as many polygons as half our tower at the moment. So we can do that by either adjusting our resolution here. So if I bring that down to 3, it will be more faceted around its length. So perhaps if I bring that down to 2, it will help you see. There we go. And no one's going to see this close up, so it doesn't have to be, you know, completely smooth. But I'm going to leave it at 3, I think. There we go. We also have under active spline our smooth option, so I can turn that off and on. And we also have resolution U, which is our resolution down the geometry. So if I start to reduce that, you'll see it becomes much more faceted, and I'm just trying to find like a middle ground where I think I can get away with it. I think that's perhaps too little. One more, perhaps 2. I'm doing the wrong one. Silly man. I've changed my resolution. Undo didn't work. There we go. Resolution U, somewhere around there. Perhaps not that much. I think I'm getting a bit slider happy. Okay, so somewhere along the line I've turned off the smoothing. I've probably just randomly pressed a button somewhere. This is not unusual for me. There it is, look. Okay, so now we have a hook, and of course you can change it and update it as just as you want it. I just want something to put up there as a loop that you could potentially throw a rope over. Okay, so let's rotate this now, and I'm going to do that in object mode. So let's go to object mode and hit R to rotate, and then I want to rotate this on X, no, on Z, no, on Y. I'll get it right in a minute. So let's rotate that up and -90, and now I'm going to move it to one side, because when I unhide my tower it's going to be concealed. So G, and let's move it on X, and then we can unhide our other models. There we go. So let's move this into place. So I'm going to get to a top view and use G and X to bring that over there, and then G and Y, whoops, G and Y to bring it underneath, and then we'll move it up, and it's massive of course. So G and Z. Do I keep pressing the wrong button? Yeah, I wouldn't put it past me. There we go, somewhere around there. So that's huge, so let's use the scale tool and bring that down, and even more than that. There we go, and then we'll move it up. So G and Z. I swear I'm pressing the right button, it's just not working. G and Z. There we go, and then G and Y, I think this one is. There we go. So fine tune that. So this time I do want X, and it's deciding on Z. And now I want to rotate it a bit. So let's rotate around Z and just move it back into place again. G and X. Oh, I'll get fed up of this. And G and Y. G and Y. Y, damn you. There you go. Okay, so now we've got a hook that you could conceivably hang some rope from, but what we don't have is anything for anybody to grab. So I want to put a little kind of wooden balcony in here, and we'll have a crack at that in the next one. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so this should be relatively straightforward. I've got my tower selected, and we're going to go into edit mode, and then we're going to use this essentially to make our balcony. So I'm going to press the L key while pointing at these pieces, and then press Shift D to duplicate and right click to put it back where it started. And we're going to need this to be much smaller, so I'm going to press S and scale it down, and then we'll move it into place. So what do we want? G and Y. There we go. And now I need to move it up against the edge there. So G and Z to bring it down, and G and X to put it back up against the wall. There we go. I can just pop that down a little bit, so G and Z, and bring that down. There we go. Okay, so that's kind of one part of it. We want another part on the other side as a brace, so we'll press Shift and D and then right click to put it down, and then G and Y to take it over to the other side. So now we've got kind of a little braced platform, but it needs to be extended out, so I'm going to extend these ends. So if I select one end and then select the other end, I'm going to go back to my select mode there and press Control numpad plus twice. If I do it 3 times it will do too much, so Control minus, and then we'll push this outwards a bit. So G and X, there we go. We go a little bit further than I ought to, I think, but hey, I don't want everything to be perfectly real. If we do want to, or if you would like to, you can select to the bottom and move it down, and then move these braces down a bit. But all I want to do now is actually put some boards across this. Quite rough. I want it to be a bit homespun. So I've got these which are in place. So I can Shift D on those, and then right click, and then G and X to move it, and just move it out a little bit. I'm going to press Shift H to hide everything now, and I'm going to flatten these ends. So I've selected that edge, we'll use scale and Y, yeah, Y, and just click. We want Y to be 0 to make them flat. Similarly at this end, so S to scale, Y to constrain, and then type in 0 on the Y. These are unnecessary. Oops, not that one, that one. So I'll delete that and dissolve those edges. Okay, so now I've got that, we've got the basics of our plank. I can select it and give it some thickness. So let's pull that this way a little bit, and then Alt H to unhide, and there we have a single plank, and it should be more or less sitting on top of those boards. If not, just click it, press L, G and Z, and pop it down a little bit. There we go. Right, I ought to bevel this, so let's switch that into edge mode, and then Control and B, click, and just pop in a small value for your bevel. It's probably something like 2mm, maybe a bit more than that to exaggerate, so 5mm. There we go, and let's give it 2 segments. There. Okay, so we can duplicate this board and move it as we go. So Shift and D, right click to drop it back in again, G to move it, X for the distance, and then we'll do that a few times. So Shift D, right click, G and X, and move it. And I'm moving them sort of deliberately differently so that, you know, it doesn't look perfect. So Shift D, right click, G, and move it on X, and perhaps G and move it on Y to give it an offset. So if I select this one and G and Y, push it that way, and perhaps I'll grab this one, Shift D, G and X. Looks like I didn't press G. Let me undo a couple of times. So L to select, Shift. I'm in I'm in edge mode. That's why that did that. So Shift D, G to move it, X. No, it's still not doing it. What's going on? I'm obviously not pressing the right button. G, X. There we go. Shift D, right click, G and X. Now I hear myself say it. I don't think I was right clicking. So Shift D, right click, G and X, and move that to the end, and then G and Y, and I'll just move this one out of alignment a little bit. So now we have a little kind of paved, not paved, wooden board balcony that, you know, they could theoretically get out to and, you know, access this hook. It's a little bit big actually, so let's select all of these. Just point and press L once you've got one selected. Point and press L. No, I can't do that for that because it's not on this object. So let's just reduce that down with the scale key. And then G and X, push it back against the wall. Now I'll come out of edit mode and grab the hook. And G and X. There we go. And G and Z. There we go. That hook's way too big now. G, not G, S. There we go. And G and Z. Pop it back up again. There we go. That's probably a bit better. Okay, so not an awful lot to do, but I do want to beat it up a bit. It looks too perfect at the moment. Let's go and have a look in render mode. My sun's a bit bright, isn't it? Let's take that down to 5 perhaps. There we go. So yes, I do want to beat it up a little bit, just give it some offsets here and there, just to give it a bit of character, give it a bit of life, and then I think that will be that. You can of course go on and add more and more details, it's entirely up to you, but I want to show you the basics of it essentially. So let me stop this recording and I'll talk to you in the next section. Okay, so let's give it a bit of character now. I'm going to start on the roof. So I'm going to select the roof in object mode and go into edit mode. And then with my cut tool, my loop slice, I'm going to just put a few cuts up here and perhaps move 1 or 2 of them around. So all these are there to do really is to give me enough geometry to move this around. So if I now go to vertex mode and come out of that loop slice and select there, I'm going to turn on this proportional editing, and when I now move this with G, you'll see that other bits move with it. So all I want to do really is move this in G and X, or G and Y rather, to just give it a bit of shape. So I'm going to press G and X, give it a bit of a move, go to the different levels. So let's try G and Y for this one, G and X for this one, and I'm just going around and beating it up a bit really. Shame, but there you go. So G and X, just tiny little moves, G and Y, G and Y again, just to misshape it. So it's seen some life. It's actually lived in weather and has been affected. And if you wanted to, you could select 2 points with shift held down, possibly if I was holding the shift button down. So let's do G and X on this one and pull that this way. There we go. So it's a little bit more, how can I put it, imperfect, and that's what we want. We want a bit of imperfect. So similarly, you could go up and down the tower like this. So I could go to select the tower, back in object mode obviously, and then go to edit mode and just select some corners on here and just move them ever so slightly at different levels, just to give it a teeny tiny bit of character. You know, nothing worse than perfection in 3D, unless you happen to be product modelling, in which case you probably do want perfection. There, let's do some at the top. There we go. And if you wanted to, we could slice up some of these and give that some variation as well. So let's go to slice and just put a few slices in. That's at the top as well. And then back to our move. This time I'm going to select loops. So let's go to edge mode and alt click there, and then G and Z. Now my fall off is too big now, you see it's moving everything. So I'm just going to move that down, and then under the fall off we have a value, and I can adjust that value to move and select less of my environment. So let's grab this one, Alt and then G and Z, and I'll move that down, and that, you know, is moving the above bit as well, but at least, you know, it's kind of consistent. So Alt click G, and I'll just move that a little bit on that one. And you could also go into, you know, doing these boards as well if you wished. There we go. So that's our imperfect tower, and I think modelling wise I'm probably as done as I'm going to be. But what I do want to do is add some materials to it, so that I can at least, you know, get a visual of what it may look like when I'm textured. So we'll pop some materials in next, so I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's add some materials, but before I do that, I'm just going to clear up this top polygon here. So I've selected the roof and I'm in edit mode, and I'm going to delete this polygon, and then we'll go into edge mode and alt click around that edge, and then under face we have fill grid, and that will fill that with quads, so you know, that's nice. Right, so first material, we'll do the roof. So if I select these four up here and use my control numpad plus, I'll just expand that until I get to the end. There we go. And then over on the materials tab, we'll assign this material. Sorry, my brain just went then. And then I'm going to rename it to roof tile. There we go. So that's that bit done, and now I want to select all of this lot down here. So if I alt select around the bottom, I'll use my control plus, we'll create a new material and we'll call it wood. No, we'll call it stone, because this is going to be stone, not wood. Whoops. And then I'll assign it. Let's give that a slightly off colour, a slightly off grey, to differentiate the two. Did that work? I do not know. So let's try again. Control plus 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 and assign. I can't. Yes, it absolutely did. I just need to go into material mode so I can see it. Silly man. Okay, so that's our roof done, and we could give our roof a different colour. Let's give it a reddish brick tile kind of colour. This is this is fairly good for pretty much everything at the moment, so let's just give that there. That will do. Okay, so most of the tower is going to be stone, so if we go to the tower and be in edit mode, I can click on it and press L and it will select all the link ones, and then we can add our material and call it tower stone, and we'll give it a slightly grey and assign all those polygons to it. There we go. Similarly, these up here are all going to be stone, so I'm just pointing at them and pressing L. I think I've got them all, and we'll select the stone and assign it to it. I haven't got them all, it just so happens that the colour is really close. Come on, L, L, select and assign. There we go. So that's those. These are going to be wood, of course, but down here is going to be stone, so let's select this and press L and assign that stone one to that one. There we go. I want a zone for the windows and the door, so let's select our window inners at least. And then we'll create a new material, give it a name, so this will be Windows Door. I'll assign that one. I'm going to give it a really dark colour so I can really see it. Then we'll do the same for the top windows. Soon be there. Oops, possibly. One more. There we go. Let's assign those in. Oh, come on. Assign. There we go. Just the door to do. Now these aren't all going to have the same kind of material or the same look, but they're going to share a UV, so I think I can put them in the same material. Let's assign. There we go. So now it's looking a bit more sensible. Now the only ones on here that are this roof tile will be these wooden bits, so I'm going to select them, create a new material, and we'll call it wood. Why didn't that type in? There we go. So let's make that a kind of a browny colour, and then assign. Oh, I've got one selected down here, I didn't mean to. Let's pop that back on tower stone. There we go. Okay, so lastly we have the hook, which will be here, and I think we need to convert that first, so we'll have a look at that in the next one. Okay, so in the next one we're just going to finish off basically and then step back and have a look at our work. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's just tidy up. So I've got this hook and it's a path, and we want that to be a mesh. So I'm just going to right click on it and then use convert to mesh, and now I'm going to join all my meshes together. So I'm going to select the tower, and then with shift held down I'll select my other objects, and over on the object menu I just need to hide that, that's my recording thing, and click join. and now I've got the one mesh with everything in it. So that's it essentially. Nothing more to say on this one. You need to UV it, of course, and you need to texture it. I haven't included the UVing in this one because we'd be another hour. But I hope you like it, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something, and I'll talk to you in another set.